Shalom. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery through the book of Deuteronomy.
Shalom, shalom, and welcome back to the very last episode in Deuteronomy. I have a confession to make. We are recording 3 episodes at a time. So you see in many episodes I'm wearing the same shirt. It's because we're wearing the 3 episodes at one go. Alright? And this is the very last episode, number 20 in our series of Deuteronomy. And if you're stuck with us, well, congratulations. Alright? You're one of the faithful remnant. Now we're going to jump right into the last 2 chapters, which I think will go quite quickly. This is, when people die in the Old Testament, what they will normally do is they will bless. They will bless their children, right? So you remember when Abraham died, he called his children to him, he laid hands upon them and gave like a final blessing. So this was what Moses was doing. He knew he was going to die. God told him, you're about to go up and you're about to die. So, here's where he gives his final pre-death blessing to his children. And so this first section here, verses, 1 to 5, is just a general blessing over Israel. The Lord came from Mount Sinai, down upon Mount Seir. He's shown from Mount Paran. All these are poetic language. He came with 10,000 saints from his right hand. Why 10,000? Why not 20,000? Why not 200? I don't think it's going to make a substantial difference to the whole idea of this, right? Although there are interesting details as to why he might have said that. From his right hand came a fiery law for them. So the law is fiery. Why? Do you know why the law is fiery? Because the top of the mountain was burning. Remember, there was a loud voice on the first Shavuot, a roaring sound, a thunder, and there was like fire and clouds, and the people were trembled. They were fearful. You are talking about Exodus chapter 18 all the way to 24, right? That whole description of the mountain. The law came by fire on that first Shavuot. Yes, he loves the people. God loves the people. And all his saints are in his hands. They sit down at your feet, just kind of describing. Now much nicer, right? Moses commanded a law for us. You see the problem about the first person, second person thing? If this is Moses' final blessing, what is he saying? Moses commanded a law for us. So maybe someone later on took the original where Moses says, I'm commanding you this law, or maybe they intersperse certain words to make it a little bit easier for later readers to understand. Okay, so you have this. Moses commanded a law for us, the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. He was the king of Jeshurun. Remember what we said earlier? Yeshurun is actually just another way of saying Israel. Very rare usage, right? But it is, as far as we understand it, the king in Israel. He was the king in Israel. Who is the king of Israel? Now, if you look at verse 4, let's go back to verse 4 once again. Moses commanded a law for us, right? That's what it says in verse 4. In verse 5, he says, he was a king in Israel. Now, who is this he? Who do you think the king in Israel is? Could have been Moses, right? Because this is the interjection here. Moses was like a king in Israel. And the leaders of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together. So, although in your English Bible, you find that there's a capital H there, right? This kind of thing you find very often in the Bible. The Bible translators take a liberty to assign the he. And when they think it's God, they put a capital he. But actually, if you read carefully in context, it could have been Moses. But why then did they put a capital he? Because they think, well, king of Israel. How can Moses be a king of Israel? But actually, Moses functioned pretty much like a king of Israel, right? So, from a purely textual point of view, you would not have put a capital H there. But the translators were trying to be helpful. But in trying to be helpful, sometimes it obscures the possible meanings of the text. This happens a lot in the Bible, okay? A lot in your English Bible anyway. So from verse 6 onwards, you have a blessing of all the children, okay? I say, well, not all the children, but who was Reuben? Does anyone? Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob by Leah, okay? So Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob by Leah. Was he a good son? No, he was not a good son. He slept with his father's concubine. By the way, in case you didn't know, his father had concubines, right? So it wasn't just Rachel and Leah. It's Rachel and Leah plus, okay? So he was not a good son, right? Actually, so he gets a blessing. Let's look at the blessing he gets. Let
Pastor Dan,
Reuben
Pastor
live
Dan,
and not die.
Before we go into the blessing of Reuben, right?
Yeah.
Back to the topic of king, right?
King of Jeshurun.
I think a good argument can be made that Moses is likely not referring to Moses, right? I mean, on a purely textual basis, it could refer to Moses, but then we are not in the era of kings or even judges right now. So,
Yes,
and also the function of Moses as a king was not necessarily possible, because you see all the tribesmen who do not recognize him as king.
But I
Neither do
think
his-
I think in that
yeah.
place everyone recognized him. Nobody there to argue with Moses, right?
I
mean,
think
those who
there
argue
were-
Moses all swallowed
exactly
up.
right,
Right.
exactly
So,
right.
but what I mean to say that because this stuff is interjected at much later date. Okay. Now, if you are talking about purely at that point of time, the concept of king probably didn't exist. But remember, when you read all this stuff, it's talking about stuff that happened like after you enter in the land. So whoever is writing this stuff, it's probably not Moses himself. It's probably someone at a much later stage interjecting. So verse 4 and 5 is almost like a bracketed interjection at a later date to describe, okay, this is what Moses did, right? So I think it's totally possible, right? It seems to be no problem for them to think of Moses playing a role as king. By the way, later on you'll see something else towards the end of it. They say something about Moses in this regard, which also is quite similar to this kind of thing. And that one is a lot less controversial, right? But I'm just saying purely from textual point of view, suddenly, because you're talking about Moses, you see, this kind of switching back and forth, it does happen, but occasionally it's not clear. This is one of those cases. It could go either way, right? Okay, Reuben's blessing or the lack of blessing. One verse, this is blessing. Let Reuben live and not die, nor let his men be few. So it's like not much of a blessing for a firstborn son, isn't it? Usually the firstborn son gets a double portion. Of course, that would have come from Jacob, right? That would come from Jacob. But as Moses goes, Reuben is, even though he's the firstborn of Jacob, from his point of view, now remember he's not the father of these children, right? From his point of view, as the voice of God, the mouthpiece of God, the prophet of God, he gives them this, I mean, it's like, I think Reuben is walking away thinking, like that, yeah, it's like, that's all you get, right? And next, he goes on next already. So the next guy is, verse 7, Judah. Judah is, now what rank is him? Well, you guys are good, huh? Judah is number 4 by Leah. So you go from number 1 to number 4, you skip over Simeon and you skip over Levi. So this is not going by alphabetical order. It's not going by chronological order. It's going by something else, okay? Reuben, okay, I give you face. You're the oldest. I just say something, but something. Okay, next, right? And he doesn't get much. Then you get to Judah. Judah says, and this is for Judah, verse 7. Okay, let's look at verse 7. Hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him to his people. What do you mean, bring him to his people, right? Let his hands be sufficient for him, and may you be a help against his enemies. Okay, a little bit better than for Reuben. Now he's got victory. God listens to him, whatever bringing him to his people is. Next, you balik a bit, you go to number 3, right, of Leah. Levi. Now, Levi gets a whole lot, right, all the way to verse 10. Levi, okay, let's think for a second, right? Why do you suppose Levi gets this much by way of blessing? Well, one could be maybe Moses pity them, they got no land, they need a bit more blessing to back them up. You know what I mean, right? Maybe that was sort of like the thing. Or scholars would say this part of it was written by a priestly source, right? Whoever wrote this would have been a priest. So being a priest, kaki lang, I better put a bit more, right? Otherwise people get upset at me, right? So just like Singaporeans, when it comes to Singapore, we write bigger, right, everything. But other nation, Malaysia, the one line can already, right? So, depending on where you're from. So some scholars would say, okay, probably a priestly hand involved in this. Otherwise, how is it that Judah gets one line, right? One line, basically one line, right? Reuben gets like almost half a line. Then suddenly, okay, let's see what they get. Let's see what the Levites get. Let your Tumim and your Urim. Okay, what is your Tumim and Urim? Is this like, we're not really sure, right? It's probably some sort of stones. And the Urim, the word Urim, Or means light. Okay, we have a ministry in Peter Sukaria's church called Or Har Carmel. There's the light of Carmel. Okay, so and Urim is, we don't know, maybe it's a shining stone or something that, if God speaks, it lights up. Who knows what it is? The Urim and Thummim will be with your Holy One. That is, will be with who is the Holy One? In this case, it will be the Levites, because it's a blessing for the Levites, whom you tested at Massah. So the Holy One is not God, because whom you tested. So these Levites were tested at Massah somehow, with whom you contended with the waters of Meribah. Again, who is this talking about? Whenever you hear the waters of Massah, the waters of Meribah, what do you remember happened there? That was where they disobeyed, isn't it? That's where who disobeyed? Well, I guess you could say Aaron and Moses. Basically, both of them were tested at Meribah. So this line is actually a priestly line, right? So you have this priestly line tested there, who says to his father and mother, I've not seen them. Whoa, look at that. They don't know their father and mother. Nor did he acknowledge his brothers or know his own children. Very poor thing, these Levites. They're like orphans like this. For they have observed your word and kept your covenant, right? So you think about some of this idea that these people are full-time. They have left family, they have left friends, they have left land in order to perform the duty of God. Does this remind you of some saying of Jesus? Yeah, it does, right? Because in Luke chapter 14, verse 26, okay.
If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple.
Okay, so you can see almost the echo of what was going on here. Sometimes you read Jesus. I keep saying Jesus has a lot of Deuteronomy in his mind. A lot of his teaching, almost as if he's been reading Deuteronomy, or maybe he's like us, doing this study. And then when you go out from this class, you're thinking about all this stuff, and it comes out in your teaching again. So I suspect that verse in Luke 14, and of course not just Luke 14, it appears in all three of the synoptic gospel, in Mark chapter 10 verse 29 and Matthew 19 verse 29, could be a reference to this thing, the idea of serving God as a whole full-time thing. Basically, you guys here, right? You guys here, full-time, right? So they've done this, for they have observed your word and kept your covenant. And what is their job? What is the priestly role? They shall teach Jacob your judgments and Israel your law, right? That's the first thing. The first job of these people who are called, and I guess if you want to project it forward to the time of disciples, the disciples would, the mandate for the disciples was what? You shall make disciples of all nations, and then do what? Teaching them. So if I were to understand this correctly, I think Jesus was thinking about this whole last bit. Remember, this is a last great commission of Moses, if you like, to the Levites, right? Levites, this is your great commission. You leave everything. You're going to give yourself full time to this job. Your job is to teach, well, I presume, make disciples, teach everybody your law. This is what our job is to do, not just serving tables, but really to teach the ministry of the word, right? The ministry of the word. So they shall put incense before you, and okay, this is the second part, to play the priestly role of representing to God the people, right? That means you bring the needs of the people before God. Okay, so that is the blessing, right? The blessing, and not just the blessing, but also the role of Levi. And then you get down next, suddenly you jump to Benjamin, which is the number 2 of the second one of Rachel, right? So no more Leah already. Suddenly, I mean, there are other sons, but suddenly he's jumping back and forth here, right? So it says in verse, let's see, verse 12 here, right? Oh, by the way, verse 11 is just more blessing. Bless his substance, accept his word for Levi, right? So verse 12, so Levi really gets 4 verses, right? Benjamin gets 1 verse, and he says, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in the safety of him who shelters him all day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders. Okay, where is between your shoulders? No, that's not that. When a father carries a child, the youngest son, on his shoulders, that is where you are, okay? And Benjamin, you are little one, okay? God will carry you like this, okay? I hope it doesn't put on too much weight because, could be a problem after that. But that's Benjamin, right? You get the blessing of the youngest son, okay? God will always carry you because, the youngest one always sayang lah, right? So the blessing of Joseph, wow, that's quite substantial. Look at this, right? So now you get from Benjamin to number 1 by Rachel. This is Jacob's favorite, right? Wow, look at this. First of all, you got to remember, was there a tribe of Joseph? No. So what was the tribes that came from Joseph? Ephraim and Manasseh. Very good. Okay. So there was no tribe of Joseph, but his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, they received a double portion, right? It's sort of reversed, by the way. Actually, Manasseh was the older one, but the last minute, the guy, he crossed his hand, like this. Maybe he's thinking, last time I tricked my father, maybe now I'm being tricked. So he decided that to untrick, but because there was no trick, so the untrick became the trick. So Ephraim ended up with a double portion. Double portion meaning the birthright. So he gets blessed. So now this is actually a blessing for two groups of people. And it says, blessed is Yahweh in his, okay, verse 13, now let's have a look at that. Blessed is Yahweh in his land. God will be the land of Manasseh, and which is, by the way, half of it is actually in the Transjordan, will be blessed with the precious things of heaven, the dew. So basically, good prospering, and the deep lying beneath, with the precious fruits of the sun. Okay, lots of nice things lah. Basically, it's a very nice place, like Disneyland, like that, right? Precious produce, best things, precious things of everlasting hills, precious, all kinds of precious things, and the favor of him. Wow, they are getting a good deal out of this. So far, I think this is one of the best one, right? And the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. His glory is like the firstborn bull. Okay, this part is quite interesting. The glory of him is like a firstborn bull. His horns is like the horns of a wild ox. You know what's so interesting about this, right? The LXX, which is the Greek, translate this, the horns of a wild ox. The wild ox here is a super interesting word because it is translated as monokeratos, which in English is unicorn, right? So in the King James Version, this is translated as the unicorn. So there are unicorns in the Bible. Okay, most likely it's probably a rhinoceros or something like this, right? But monokeratos means one horn. See, one horn, people translate as unicorn. We ask, is there a unicorn? Okay, so in case you are reading some very old version of Bible and people say, there's a unicorn in the Bible, yeah, most likely is this one, the monokeratos, right? So, but, it's a wild ox. Good chance there's a... Now, someone say, but rhinoceros have two horns. There are some rhinos that have single horns, right? There's African rhinos and all different kind of rhinos. Whether they had rhinos there or not, I don't know. But clearly they were aware of this thing and therefore they referred to it. But his glory is like the glory of a rhinoceros. Wow. He must be a very powerful beast, right? The horn is so big. And horns usually refer to power. Power, or, in Revelations, horns are kings and things like that, right? So he'll be powerful. He'll be glorious. He shall push the people. Okay, so in MRT, Joseph's kids will push you around, okay? To the ends of the earth. There are 10,000s of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. So who has more? Ephraim has more. Because of this whole thing, right? The birthright business. So birthrights are kind of important in those days. Today we don't care, right? But those days it's quite important, right? And so that's actually Joseph, right? Then after that you have Zebulun and Issachar, 2 verses, 1 for each, right? They are grouped together. They are frequently grouped together. Zebulun and Issachar, by the way, right? They are frequently grouped together, maybe because, location-wise they are quite close. And their blessing was this, verse 19, right? They shall offer out sacrifice, for they shall partake the abundance of the seas and the treasures hidden in the sand. Now, okay, first, what is the abundance of the sea? Zebulun and Issachar is located, I guess, near the Galilee, right? They are inside the, let's say, the west of the Galilee and the east of the Mediterranean. So they're basically between the Mediterranean and the Galilee. It's just a very short distance, right? Although they're not actually on the coast of either one, right? So maybe they enjoy a bit of both. Then what about this treasures hidden in the sand? Okay, I have people sending me reports. Pastor, they found oil off the shores of Mediterranean where Zebulun is. Oh, that's the treasures hidden in sand. Look, I don't think so lah. I don't think they were thinking about that in those days, right? But maybe there's some hidden treasures. And then verse 20, there's still He provided the first part of himself because the lawgiver's portion was reserved there. A lawgiver's portion. What is a lawgiver's portion? He came with the heads of the people. By the heads of the people, it's not like they chop off people's heads and came with them, but the leaders of the people. He administers justice. So, these people, the Issachar, the people who kind of know the times and all that, apparently they have this wisdom of his judgment, right? Some sort of lawgiver's portion. They're wise. Maybe that's why later on they say the people of Issachar, they know the times. There's no wisdom to it. You look in the camp, right? The way they camp around in the tabernacle, there will be 3 tribes on each side of the square area of the tent, right? And the front of the tent, one of the tribes in front and at the entrance of the tent was actually Issachar, right? So maybe they are the ones who can look inside. They can see what's going on inside. We all know what's going on in the temple ground. Ask the Issachar people. They can tell because they're staying there. You see, what's going on? Yeah. Yesterday I saw Aaron go in there, bring something like, they know what's going on. I think something's about to happen, right? So maybe these are the guys out there. And then Dan, my namesake. Dan is a lion's whelp. What is a lion's whelp? It's cub. He shall leap from Bashan. What kind of blessing is this? Man, come on, what kind of blessing is this? He's a lion. Maybe he'll be strong lah. Lion's cub is strong or not? Actually, lion's cub get bullied a lot, right? So he shall leap from Bashan. So what was Bashan? Bashan is actually up in Golan Heights in the north, right? Now, you look in the maps, they'll give you Dan as down by the south. And then later on, in the north, they have the northmost part, they came to have a plot of land up in the north. So maybe they get this extra bit of land there, right? And then after that, you have, I skipped over Gad, right? Verse 21 is actually for Gad. 20 and 21 is actually for Gad. So Gad is the one who gets the lawgiver's portion, Gad. And then you have Naphtali after that, verse 23. And Naphtali, Naphtali, satisfied with favor, full of blessing of the Lord. Well, this is not bad, right? They get favor, they get full of blessing. They possess the west and the south. Very specific, right? The west. Now remember Naphtali. Naphtali is nobody knows about Naphtali, right? Jesus, in Matthew it says the Messiah, it says that the Old Testament, there's a prophecy, fulfilled the prophecy that the Messiah will come from Naphtali, arise out of Naphtali. Actually, there's no such prophecy, right? But Matthew says there is, But in any case, they also think of Naphtali as, nobody knows about this very small plot of land, right? But of this, they say they'll be satisfied with favor, they'll be full of blessing, and they'll possess the west and the south. I have no idea what that actually means, right? And then, of course, from 24 to 25, you get Asher, okay? Blessed, okay, let's see what it says. Asher is what does it say in your words? Most blessed of sons. Okay, wait a minute. Now, if you just read this, you think that among all these 12 sons, Asher, who we hardly hear about this guy, right? Maybe that's why he's most blessed. But anyway, maybe he kept him mouth quiet all the quiet. He's the quiet one. Don't say anything wrong, okay? But why is Asher the most blessed of all sons? So is it or is it not? Well, actually, the Hebrew is not. The Hebrew says, blessed among many sons. Blessed of many sons is Asher. That means not really he's the most blessed of all sons, but he's blessed among many sons. Okay, so he's blessed along with everyone. Let him be favored by his brothers. That kind of blessing, right? Let he has some favor, but not the most blessed. Let him dip his foot in oil. Okay, what is this again? So this is probably some ritual practice, right? Some anointing, some kind of luxurious picture. You can dip your foot. If someone peel your grapes for you, wow, that's quite luxurious, right? Eat grapes, people peel for you. You dip your foot in oil. That's also very luxurious. Okay, your sandals will be iron and bronze, and your days, as your days, so shall your strength be. There's no one like the God of Yeshurun, right? That's again Israel, who rides the heavens to help you. Look at that, such nice poetic language. And His excellency on the clouds. The eternal God is your refuge. That's Asher's refuge. And underneath are the everlasting arms. He will thrust the enemies. There's a lot of blessing for Asher. Pretty good, right? No, actually, sorry. Actually, from verse 26 onwards, it's actually switching away from these tribes. So there are quite a number of tribes that were not mentioned. Quite a number of them who didn't get anything, right? So Simeon, for example, didn't get anything. Do you notice? Maybe because, Simeon and Levi went out, killed this, because someone raped Dinah, right? And then they went out, killed, and they caused Jacob a lot of embarrassment. So maybe because of that, you know, maybe because actually Jacob gave his word, right? So don't do this, but because they were so angry, they wanted to take a revenge for their sister Dinah. So they went there and they killed all these people. Maybe there was a reason, that he was disqualified from blessing. I don't know, right? Could be. I'm just trying to guess how come his name was missing. Okay, so you get to the 26 onwards, it's now all the blessing of Israel, right? God will protect them. God comes riding on the heavens and clouds and all these things. I just want to look at the order of the blessing, right? So far we have Reuben, Judah, Levi, Benjamin, and Joseph, meaning Ephraim and Manasseh, Zebulun, Issachar, Gad, then Naphtali, Asher, right? And so then the question was, what is the pattern here? Well, it does seem that a lot of this has to do with the centrality of Judah and the ones that are, around Judah and kind of proceed on the. So then Naphtali, Asher, these were very far north. That's why they came in last. So it is possible that this was written from a south-centric kind of writing as a second point, right? That's the reason, the order of this thing. So a Judahite preference. But these kind of things we are kind of speculating a little bit, right? Okay, so let's quickly go to chapter 34 because we are about to finish this whole thing. This is the end already, right? Moses goes up to find after it's like one of those shows that one of those Bollywood movies. You get shot with a bullet, you walk around here, walk down there, you sing a song here, dance behind this tree, and you get on a train all the way to Calcutta, with a bullet in you, bleeding, and then you still won't die until very, very last minute. Probably half an hour later, you finally die, right? Okay, finally Moses is about to die here, right? He finally, after saying so many things, finally he gets up on the mountain. Moses goes up the mountain on the Mount Nebo, on top of Pisgah, which is really that that whole area, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. This is a problem. Because at this point of time, they are not in the land yet. There was no land of Gilead. There was no Dan is way up in the north. Dan was not in the north until many, 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 many years later. So whoever is writing this is using terms and terminology that did not exist yet at that point of time. So that's why I keep saying these bits were written at much later date, right? Very like otherwise, why would say that nobody would know where Dan was at that point of time? As far as they knew, even a short while later, even 10, 20 years later, Dan was still in the south. It was only much later that Dan went up in the north. Okay, so this bit is this anachronism in the textual analysis. So in any case, and all the land of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, whoever was writing this was writing at a point of time when these lands were all located. People already settled in the land. That's why you can point to that, that was Naphtali. Well, at the point Moses went up, they haven't even entered into the land. It was just the land of Canaan, right? So there's a little bit of a later hand writing as if it was at the time of Moses. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land which I saw to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I'll give it to your descendants. I've caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. So this whole part really is saying that, whatever God promised came to pass, right? And whatever God said also happened. He really died. So Moses clearly, of course, did not write this because, Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. It's not something Moses will write here, come out from his grave to write this thing, right? It's not going to be. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. Listen, it says here, right? But no one knows his grave to this day. If Moses was writing this, he would know where his grave is, right? He'll probably be writing this at the grave, right? Secondly, what do you mean no one knows his grave to this day? What is this day? Must be much, much later date, right? So again, I suggest to you that, it's not so simple, the authorship of some of these books, right? Sometimes you do have other hands involved in it, but it's okay. Canonically, we accept this for what it is. Moses was 120 years old. When he died, his eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. I'm not quite sure what natural vigor means, right? But obviously, he's strong enough to climb the mountain. And his eyes was clear enough to see what God. Otherwise, God, look there, imagine, my dad has cataracts, right? Sometimes I show him book, he cannot see. So God, look at Gad. God, kwabo, right? You promised I will see, but now I cannot see anymore. Well, they want to make sure you know that he could still see. He did see it, right? His eyesight was still 20/20. Okay, so he had good eyesight, and all the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plain of Moab 30 days. So they knew he died. How did they know he died? He went up alone. Nobody knew where he was buried. Wait, who buried him first? Okay, so this is a bit of a... Look, some of these debates are super fun, okay? For those of you who are following it, it's really fun. It's no real meaning to us, right? I mean, really, from our point of view, who cares who buried Moses, where he buried, right? But it's really fun because, it's interesting as we dig in the text a little bit. I'll let you go have this fun. Okay, go figure out for yourself. Who do you think buried Moses? Clearly they knew he died, right? How come they don't know? Or maybe they knew initially, but later on they forgot. Maybe they forgot, right? Maybe we should have our Israel trip, have a walk around Pisgah. Maybe you might stumble on, the grave of Moses. And then you can solve the whole dispute in the book of Jude, right? Remember the book of Jude? The angels were debating about the body of Moses. Maybe you might resolve that dispute. Okay, so verse 9, Joshua was then filled with the spirit of wisdom. Hakama, right? So it says here, for Moses had laid his hand on. When did this happen? So maybe Joshua buried Moses, because Joshua tend to follow Moses everywhere. Maybe Joshua didn't tell anyone because he didn't want anyone to worship Moses, right? Because where, by the way, today you go to Israel, you can go to the graves of Joshua and Caleb, by the way. That's just, people will be going there, they'll be at the wall. Of course, they're not praying to them, but they like to pray there for some reason, right? Maybe as a kind of veneration or something. Joshua didn't want this. So, okay, we won't tell you where I hid him, right? I shall know this and I'll go to my grave with it. So Joshua alone maybe knew where it was. So in that case, maybe this was what happened, right? It says, in verse 9, Moses laid hands on him. So the children of Israel heeded him and did as the Lord. So that was like the commissioning, right? And then it says in verse 10, since then, there has not risen in Israel a prophet like Moses, who knew the Lord face to face. Now let's think about this for a second here. When this person says since then to now, when was the time of this writing? So it must have been quite a long time, because no point writing this. If Moses just died, then say, since yesterday there has not risen a prophet. It cannot be like this, right? It cannot be like this. So this statement has to be written, must be quite substantial. Maybe a few hundred years has passed since the time. We have not had a prophet like Moses. What kind of prophet? One who saw or who spoke to the Lord face to face, who knew the Lord face to face, and also in all the signs which the Lord sent him to do. So his unique, verse 12 says, mighty power and his relationship with God. There's none like him, right? Deuteronomy 15, verse 15 to 18. Let's have a look at that, right? 18. Yeah, verse 15 to 18. This is Moses' own saying. Moses'
Verse
word.
15. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear, according to all you desire of the Lord your God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. 17. And the Lord said to me, what they have spoken is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him.
Okay, so this is a little bit interesting, isn't it, right? So we are told now, from the point of whoever is writing this, that, since that time there has not been a prophet like Moses. But then you remember Moses himself made this prayer to God, and God agrees that I will, in fact, raise up a prophet like you. Now the question is, when? Who? Who is this prophet, right? So, because we are Christians, of course, we kind of know the answer, at least for us, right? So you look in John chapter 14, verse 7, for example. It says, if you had known me, you have known my Father, and from now on, you know him and have seen him. Jesus is saying this, right? In other words, you see me, you have seen the Father. Wow, John chapter 1, verse 18, right? John chapter 1, verse 18, He says, no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. Right? John chapter 5 verse 19. By the way, a lot of this is in John. John chapter 5 verse 19. Then Jesus answered and said, most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do, whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. And last one is John chapter 6 verse 46. John chapter 6 verse 46. It says, not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father, right? Most assuredly I say to you, he who believes me has everlasting. So Jesus is talking about he himself has seen the Father, right? And then maybe the last one, John chapter 8 verse 38. John chapter 8 verse 38, it says, I speak what I've seen with my Father, and you do what you have seen with your father. So Jesus, again, I want to kind of persuade you this, that Jesus had Deuteronomy very, very firmly in his mind. He was not just randomly teaching stuff. He knew Deuteronomy really well. And you see all these hints, you see, right? So what happens is that it is our Christian belief that Jesus was this promised prophet, right? Whoever was writing it haven't seen someone like it. But Jesus came on the scene. He knew the Lord. In fact, he was the Lord face to face. But he had power. He performed great miracles. Yes, Arthur.
So what about Genesis 32:30? Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face and my...
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that's interesting, right? I mean, has anyone seen God face to face and lived? I mean, the general answer is no. General answer is no. But actually, you think about it, there are lots of people who have done that. Obviously, Adam and Eve saw God face to face, right? Before the fall. And it would seem that this word Peniel means the face of God, right? I've seen the face of God and lived. Now, whether he actually saw the face of God is a question, because it was at night, right? They were struggling in the dark. Who knows, right? But then arguably, even in the pitch darkness, it's kind of hard to struggle in wrestling in pitch darkness. Maybe he switched off the light, he switched off the light for the purpose of that, right? Yeah. But there have been people who evidently had some, it's really hard to say, right? Because even Moses himself, he in Exodus chapter 33, he says, God, show me your glory, right? So what did God do? God hid him in a cleft. So what all he saw was actually some other part, not really the face to face. So I guess you could argue that when they say they saw God, the face of God, and all these things, it really is talking about kind of indirect seeing, right? Rather than direct seeing. So maybe it was really dark for Jacob at Peniel. Really dark, we are speculating out here. I just have to say I don't know, right? Yeah. So in that case, to know God is more than just to see God as in a visually see, right? So I mean, we tend to take these words as face value. See God as in, I saw God already, It's like, look, I saw Lee Kuan Yew pass by in a car, right? But you don't know Lee Kuan Yew. You saw him pass by in a car. You saw him, but you don't know him. I think here very much the idea is that this is not someone who just saw God. This is someone who knew God, who really knew God. And I think Jesus was alluding to that. Someone who knew the heart of the Father, not just the face of the Father. Okay, so let's look at Acts chapter 3, verse 22. For Moses truly said to the fathers, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brethren, right? And in Acts, they are saying, who is this prophet? In Acts, they are obviously pointing to Jesus as the fulfillment of this particular prophecy, right? Again, in Acts chapter 7, verse 37, right? Acts chapter 7, verse 37. This is that Moses. This is that Moses. Okay, that Moses meaning that prophet like Moses. This is who said to the children of Israel, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brethren. Him you shall fear. So again, they are referring to Jesus. This is that Moses, right? The one that's been promised. So last verse of all, verse 11 and 12. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 11 and 12. In all the signs and wonders which the Lord has sent, the power he did, verse 12, by all the mighty power and all the great terror which Moses was terrifying, right? Performed in the sight of all Israel. And with that, you come to the end of Deuteronomy. Wow. Okay, congratulations if you stuck it out to this point. We hope this has been helpful to you. As I always say, we don't always have all the answers, right? Our faith is predicated in God. We believe God. We study these things to know God more. Our faith is not predicated on the scholarship. If it was, you'd be in trouble, right? Given all these complications that we've seen. You believe God and then you study. You don't study and then hope that through the study you might then believe in God, right? So our faith is, I hope that you will work out your own faith in fear and trembling as you look in the Word of God, learning how to live as His people. God bless you. May you enjoy this book of Deuteronomy, and we hope you join us for our next book study.
We hope you enjoyed studying the Word of God. Join us again as we continue through the book of Devarim.